Resentment often carries a sense of superiority. It creates a feeling of being right, of having the higher moral ground. This is the part of its appeal. It offers that emotional leverage without the risk of confrontation. It allows someone to feel justified while remaining silent. And because of that, people cling on to it. Letting go of that resentment can feel like losing the only proof that their effort mattered. Resentment starts to leak. It rarely comes out as a direct confrontation. Instead, it appears sideways, in sarcasm, disguised as humor, in delayed responses, in emotional withdrawal, in subtle punishment, in forgetting things that once mattered, in giving the bare minimum when there was once generosity. Not because a person wants to hurt anyone, but because pressure always finds a way out when it cannot exit cleanly. I want to touch upon resentment today, how it is one of the most misunderstood emotional states because it rarely announces itself honestly. Most people don't wake up thinking, I'm going to be resentful today. They wake up feeling tired, irritable, distant, or emotionally flat. They feel less generous than they used to, less patient, less willing to explain themselves. Something in them has hardened, but they can't sort of explain how and why. Resentment doesn't feel like anger. Anger is loud and obvious, whilst resentment is quiet and enduring. It feels justified, it feels earned, it feels like the natural outcome of having put up with so much for too long. And that's what makes it dangerous, because resentment convinces a person that it is a response to what others did, when in reality, it is often a response to what they themselves did not say. So resentment is not born in moments of conflict, it is born in moments of silence. It forms when something matters and goes unexpressed, when a boundary is crossed and not named, when a cost is absorbed and not acknowledged, when a person chooses peace externally whilst creating tension internally. Over time, these small moments accumulate and the emotional debt compounds. So, this is why the resentment is so common in people who see themselves as good, responsible, or emotionally mature. These are the people who don't want to create problems, people who don't want to burden others, because they believe that managing their own discomfort is a sign of strength. They think they can take it. They can sort of gloss over other people's breach of their peace, and they want to be accommodating. They adjust, they carry more than they should, and for a long time it feels like the right thing to do. But ultimately, as you know, it's like a volcano that is building up and it will erupt. You then will remember every time that you stayed silent when you shouldn't have, every time you let something slide, every time you told yourself it wasn't worth bringing up, and eventually something shifts inside of you. You stop feeling open. You become less warm, less available, less interested in explaining yourself. The resentment doesn't explode, it settles inside. So, unlike the analogy of the volcano, which explodes, erupts so violently, so visibly, this is an internal explosion that which builds up after a period of time. So what makes resentment particularly corrosive is that it often feels morally justified. There's a quiet narrative running underneath it that says, I've done my part, I've been patient, I've been reasonable, I've been understanding, and that narrative isn't always false. The problem is not that the effort wasn't real, the problem is that the cost was never made visible. Resentment grows fastest where effort is invisible. When people give more than they can sustain without naming the toll that is taken upon them, they begin to feel unseen. Not because others are intentionally blind, but because nothing was ever expressed. And when you don't express the cost, it cannot be acknowledged, shared, or negotiated. It can only be stored. This is where resentment starts to leak. It rarely comes out as a direct confrontation. Instead, it appears sideways, in sarcasm, disguised as humor, in delayed responses, in emotional withdrawal, in subtle punishment, in forgetting things that once mattered, in giving the bare minimum when there was once generosity. Not because a person wants to hurt anyone, but because pressure always finds a way out when it cannot exit cleanly. This is why resentment is so confusing for the people on the receiving end. They often feel a shift in tone or warmth but don't know why. They sense distance but can't trace it to a specific event from their perspective. Nothing obvious happened from the resentful person's perspective. Everything happened quietly. Resentment often carries a sense of superiority. It creates a feeling of being right, of having the higher moral ground. This is the part of its appeal. It offers that emotional leverage without the risk of confrontation. It allows someone to feel justified while remaining silent. And because of that, people cling on to it. Letting go of that resentment can feel like losing the only proof that their effort mattered. But there is a cost of this resentment, and the cost of it is not primarily relational, it is internal. Over time, it narrows emotional range, it reduces generosity, it hardens the tone, it makes curiosity feel unsafe. The person becomes less of themselves long before anyone else is affected, and eventually, the very qualities that made them kind, patient, or generous begin to erode. That's the cost of resentment. It's often mistaken for clarity. People tell themselves that they have finally seen the truth about someone, that they have realized it's not worth trying anymore. But clarity brings lightness. Resentment brings weight. It's something that feels heavy, constricting, or draining. It's not clarity, it is emotional backlog. This is why the resentment does not resolve itself with time. The time itself does not dissolve that emotional debt or burden that people have built up. It compounds it. The longer something goes unspoken, the more charged it becomes. Just think about it in your own life. You may have had a slight misunderstanding with someone where words were not spoken, but it was just an interpretation of what was unspoken. And you become distant, and the longer you leave that without addressing it, the more difficult it becomes to address those issues in that relationship, or even come together and even have a civilized conversation. Both parties end up drifting, avoiding, and totally separating, which was once a very thriving friendship or relationship becomes completely broken and fragmented. Many people have experienced that. And this is how this surfaces and manifests in people's lives. It comes out as, this distorted version of what that relationship was originally like. Not because the person is unreasonable, it's because the original moment for the clean expression to have expressed the issue at that moment in time has now passed. There is an antidote to this resentment, this feeling that you have building inside of you. The antidote to resentment is not confrontation, and it is not venting. It is not unloading everything at once. The antidote is early, proportionate expression, naming the costs while they are still manageable, restoring the honesty before silence turns into scorekeeping. The resentment ends when the expression returns to the right time, at the right place, in the right proportion. This actually requires the shift inside of a person, how they understand other people. Because many people believe that being emotionally responsible means not burdening others with their feelings. In reality, emotional responsibility means sharing information before it becomes weaponized by silence. It means trusting that honesty, delivering that message to the other person in a calm way, which is more manageable now than managing the fallout from the damage it causes if expressed in the wrong, resentful way. So, this is not asking people not to say anything. You basically still say what you feel, but there's a way of saying it. Instead of storing up things inside of you and not expressing them at the right time, at the right place, you basically mention things, but everything has to be done in proportionality. But recognize also that resentment is not proof that you were wronged, but as evidence that something important went unspoken. Resentment is that sign for you that points backwards, that something should have been addressed previously rather than now. And this is how you catch that resentment early before it builds up, and causes that emotional burden and ultimate silent explosion, because the effect of it will be more harmful for yourself as well as your relationships. It wants to be able to be handled without it becoming a burden and manifesting into a damaged relationship, whether it's a friendship or it's a family relation. These things have a huge impact on those relationships if they are not handled with maturity at the right time, at the right time, at the right place, with the right people. Because resentment ultimately is a destructive force inside of us. When people decide that they don't want to deal with it at the right time, at the right place, then it ends up becoming bitterness inside of them. And this is where we end up ultimately destroying all these relationships which we have become emotionally invested in over a period of time, and ultimately end up disturbing our own peace. This is what it's ultimately about, your own peace, which is very, very important. And this is how we need to take charge, take stock of our emotions, and really express them emotionally in a mature manner at the right time, at the right place.